Every now and then, a show comes along that you think you've got figured out, but then it just completely pulls the rug out from under you. It turns out to be something way deeper, way darker, way more mythic than you ever expected. Well, today, we're going to step into this forgotten warehouse in Voyle Heights because we're diving into a wrestling show that was, believe it or not, secretly a religious epic. So yeah, this is not a wrestling arena. It is an altar. The blood spilled on the canvas is a sacrifice. I mean, wow. That was the promise Lucha Underground opened with. And look, this wasn't just some cool, edgy tagline. No way. This was the absolute core philosophy of the entire show. They took this incredible, high-flying action of lucha libre and just slammed it head-on into ancient, bloodthirsty Aztec mythology. All right, so let's get into it. More than just wrestling. So how on earth did they pull this off? Well, to really get it, we've got to start with the place itself. See, this was no shiny, sterile sports arena. Not at all. It was this gritty, forgotten warehouse that its followers, its fans, they just called it the temple. And what a temple it was. The whole show just had this incredible grindhouse movie vibe, The lighting was always super dark and moody, tons of ambers and these deep, crushing blacks. In the ring itself, it wasn't some clean, bright white canvas. No, it was stained and gray. And right in the middle was this giant, incredibly intricate Aztec seal. And that wasn't just for looks. It was basically a capstone, a barrier holding back the hungry gods that were trapped right below their feet. Okay, so you have a temple, right? Well, every temple needs a high priest. And this place, oh man, this place was run by one of the most compelling villains I have ever seen on television. The proprietor, the man in charge, Dario Cueto. Now, if you're a wrestling fan, you're used to the typical authority figure, right? The corporate boss obsessed with ratings, money, selling t-shirts. Dario Cueto, he wasn't that guy, not even close. He wasn't motivated by any of that stuff. He was a believer. On the surface, yeah, he's this man of wealth and taste. But underneath it all, he was a devotee, a follower of this dark religion where the only prayer that actually mattered was violent. And that quote right there just nails his whole deal perfectly. See, he didn't love violence like some sadist who just enjoys pain. No, he loved it like a priest loves prayer. For him, violence was the purest expression of the human spirit. So the matches in his temple, they weren't for our entertainment. They were rituals. They were designed to feed this epic cosmic struggle between darkness and light. Pretty much exactly what the ancient Aztecs believed was needed to keep the entire universe from just dying out. So, what was his end game? What was he building towards? Well, around his neck, he always wore this key. And for a whole season, we had absolutely no idea what it unlocked. It was his ultimate trump card, his ace in the hole. And then we found out. It was the key to a cell, and inside that cell was his brother, Matanza, this hulking monster who was literally possessed by an Aztec god. And just like that, Dario Cueto went from being a wrestling promoter to the keeper of a living, breathing nuclear deterrent. So now we get to the 7 Aztec tribes. And look, this whole mythology thing, it wasn't just window dressing. It wasn't just for show. It was woven into the very fabric of every single character. The show basically reimagined its wrestlers as these modern-day descendants of 7 ancient Aztec warrior tribes. And each tribe had its own animal totem that pretty much defined their fighting style and their destiny. And the show's main conflict, it was built entirely around this idea. So on one side, you had the Jaguar tribe. Their champion was the show's hero, Prince Puma. He was everything you want in a hero. Agile, explosive, just a classic good guy. And on the other side, the Death tribe, led by a guy named Mil Muertes, which literally means 1,000 deaths. This dude was basically the avatar of destruction. His backstory was that as a kid, he survived the huge 1985 Mexico City earthquake, and it messed him up so bad that he came to see death not as something to fear, but as a comfort. And this world was just so vast and wild. I mean, you had the reptile tribe with a guy named Drago, who was literally a dragon man. He would spit this corrosive mist at people. Then there was the Moth tribe, these psychologically broken siblings who fought with this deeply unsettling, chaotic energy. And then you had the Eagle tribe, led by the absolute legend Rey Mysterio. And they were like the guardians of tradition, just soaring through the air with this incredible grace. Okay, so the gift of the gods. This all sounds awesome, right? But how does all this mythology actually move the story along? Well, it's through what I think is one of the most brilliant narrative devices in wrestling history, the Gift of the Gods Championship. Now, this was not just another championship belt you win in a match. No. This was something you literally had to build. And it didn't look like a sports trophy. It looked like some ancient artifact you'd unearth in a ruin. Just heavy with silver and gold and what felt like actual history. And here's the genius of how it worked. So, step one, you had to win one of 7 ancient medallions. Each one represented one of the tribes. Okay, step two, once all 7 medallions were won, those 7 wrestlers would all fight each other, and they'd literally place their medallions into the belt itself to unite the power of the tribes. Step 3, win that match, the winner gets a shot at the main championship. But, and this is the kicker, step 4, they had to give 1 week's notice. And that notice, it wasn't just some random plot device, it was a ritual requirement so that the temple could properly prepare itself for a worthy sacrifice. Which brings us to the end, a legend in the shadows. So, how did it all end? What was the final sacrifice? Well, like all great myths, maybe this show was just never meant to last forever. So in the final, really haunting scene of the whole series, the lights in the temple just go out for good. The ring is empty, the fighters are all gone, they've just vanished. It really drives home this idea that the temple was never just a building. It was some kind of supernatural manifestation, like a ghost that was summoned for this brief, violent pageant. And then once the gods were fed, it just dispersed right back into the ether. So what's the takeaway here? Ultimately, Lucha Underground created a world where the supernatural wasn't some metaphor. It was totally 100% real. And by doing that, they pulled off something truly remarkable. They gave every single punch, every suplex, every 3 count a kind of cosmic significance. It was this perfect blend of that gritty, grindhouse cinema style with a genuine, deep respect for ancient mythology. It created this whole new genre where the stakes weren't just about winning a match. They were about life, death, and the fate of the entire universe. And that really is the question the show leaves you with, isn't it? What happens when our oldest myths refuse to stay dead? It kind of suggests that these old stories, these ancient gods, they're not just history collecting dust in a book. They're out there, waiting in the shadows, just waiting for the right sacrifice and the right time to rise again.